Okay, so I'll introduce what is a matroid, and I'll give basic properties and axioms related to that. And after that, Sivaramakrishnan will tell you how matroid structures can be exploited for greedy algorithms and so on. So, so how did the idea of a matroid get introduced? Like, people used to talk about the independence of linear equations, like of a matrix and so on. So the ideas of vector independence and dependence, ranks, bases, all of that had come. So, but this notion of independence on vectors. So this notion of independence of vectors, they wanted to eliminate the vectors part of it and make it more general into some set structure. So basically, matroids is something that depends on the independence, and it is a structure. It's a set structure. So we define the structure as some m equal to s comma I, where S is the universe and I is basically a subset of all independent sets from the universe. So there are various axioms to define the structure. The most intuitive and which gets its analogy directly from vector spaces is the following three axioms. First is like the null vector always belongs to the vector space. Similarly, phi should always belong to the independent set. The second thing is if some set from I, say some element from I, from I called A is in I, is in the independent set, then any subset of that should also belong to, should also be a member of I. So these two are called the definitions of independent system. And the last thing is if there are two sets A and B in I, and if mod of B is greater than A, the cardinality that is, then we can always find an element Z, there exists an Z belonging to B such that A union that Z also belongs to the independent set. So these are the three axioms which can define a matroid structure completely. Yeah. Yeah. That belongs to B minus A. Okay. So you can see that these two are fairly obvious because phi is independent, does not depend on anything, and two, this says that subset of any independent set is also independent. All right. Now, okay, based on this, we can define various things like bases, ranks, etc. So, what is a rank? Rank is given any set, say A. Okay. Okay. This is the most trivial example of a matroid. It's called a uniform matroid. It's basically defined as any, take if there's a set S, any set belonging A is independent if the cardinality of A is less than equal to some k. That's it. So why this thing holds is because phi belongs to this, and if there is some set A which is less than k, any subset of that will also be less than k. So by definition of this is the definition of independence here, basically, that mod of A should be less than equal to k. And if there is some set which is greater than A, then we can always take one element from that and add it to A, because that still will be less than equal to k. This is trivial. Okay, I'll come on to more useful examples little bit later. And yeah, so what is a rank? Rank is if you take any subset of this set S, then what is the cardinality of the maximum independent set? That we define as rank, and base is basically that set. So now we can equivalently define these three things in terms of the rank axioms, as we call it. As in, we can define the matter in terms of its ranks and everything. So the rank axiom also has three axioms. Okay. Rank rho 2 power s 2 z. Okay. Basically, this is subset of A which is independent, the maximum cardinality subset, the set with the maximum cardinality. A is just any subset of universe S. I mean, this can be written as rank of A, like this can be a function which only takes A as the rank of the matroid, then will be when A is equal to S. Rank of M. Same thing when A is equal to X. So yeah, rank axioms says that rank of A should be less than equal to the cardinality of the set A. Fairly obvious, because rank cannot have more elements than the set itself. I mean, the base cannot have more elements than the set itself, hence rank is. And if there is some set which is subset of Y, then rank of X should be less than equal to rank of. And last one is that rank of X union Y plus rank of X intersection A should be less than equal to rank of X plus rank of X plus rank of Y. So the first two are fairly obvious, and I'll prove the last one. This is called the submodularity of the rank function. Okay, so let let us consider the maximum independent set in X union Y. Let it be A. So A is A is the maximum okay maximum independent set in X union Y, and let mod of A be equal to P, and similarly let B be the maximum independent set in X intersection Y, and mod of B be equal to Q. So now if you see, okay, we can take the base from A and we can take elements from the other set. Sorry, if we can take elements from B and join some, add some extra elements from A to make another basis for the set A. This is called augmentation property, which Sivaramakrishnan will prove. But we can see from the first claim here that if B is greater than A, then we can find an element to add to A. Similarly, here if we take X intersection Y, we can add some elements to it so that it's a basis of A. So yeah, so I'll use that. Suppose I make such a set, I add such elements, and I finally get a set C. So C can be written as B union M union N, where B are the elements from X intersection Y, and M are the elements in this which are from A minus B, yeah. And N are the elements from X minus B, N minus from Y minus B. Yeah. So M are the elements from X minus B, and Y are the N are the elements from Y minus B. So this C contains elements only from these three sets. So we can write this as B union M union N. B is the intersection, M is X minus B, and N is Y minus B. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. M. Okay. Yes. M. Okay. So. This is C. This is C. Then it contains. This is the intersection part. No. Okay. This is. Okay, so yeah, where was he? Yeah, so now what is B union M? So see, C is, we have constructed independent set. So every subset of that will also be independent. So B union M is nothing but X intersection Y has elements from X intersection Y and X minus B. So all are from the set X. Okay. So it is an independent set from the set X, and B union N contains elements from X intersection Y and Y minus B. So it contains all elements from the set Y, not from X. So yeah, so we have two independent sets from the set X and Y respectively. That is B union M for X and B union N for Y. So these are the independent sets. Hence, they have to be less than the rank, because they can only be less than equal to the maximum independent set. Therefore, we can write rank of A. Sorry, rank of X plus rank of Y as greater than equal to these sets: B union M plus B union N. Now since these are independent and B is also independent from M, this is nothing but 2 mod B plus M plus N. Now C is also independent, so C is basically mod of B plus mod of M. I mean, cardinality of C is mod of B plus mod of M plus mod of N. So that is equal to, like if we write this as this, then this is nothing but mod of C plus mod of B. And mod of C was the basis for A union B. We added some elements from A to B. So this is nothing but rank of X union Y plus B is the intersection basis. So X intersection. Hence we get this part. Okay. Now this I want to prove for another important axiom called circuit axioms, which will be used for graph to denote this matter as graphic structure. So those because we took elements from B, we added B from A, make it basis of A, that is X union Y. Okay, those circuit axioms, which is the last part of the axioms. I mean, there are many axioms, but these are the three I'll be doing. It says that if X is not equal to Y and it belongs, okay, what is a circuit? Circuit is the minimal dependent set in a matrix. Like if you take any proper subset of a circuit, it will be independent. So this says that if X is not equal to is a circuit of the set of M. M is the matrix. Then X cannot be a subset of Y or vice versa. And if there is an element Z which is an element of X intersection Y, that is, it is common to both these sets, the minimal dependent set. if there is an element Z which is common to both, then we can find another circuit C3, okay, C, which belongs to, okay, let us call this capital Z, which belongs to X union Y minus Z. That is, we will find another circuit which doesn't have Z in it. So, okay, so now for, okay, let's prove it. Let's prove both of these. The first one is fairly obvious because if, okay, X is not equal to Y, that means X and Y are different. So there is at least one element which is different in both. There is one element which is different, which is not in X, say. So that means if you take any so you will have to take a subset of Y to find X, because Y has more elements than X. But that will mean that X is independent. It is not a circuit, right? So X. So for both of these to be circuits, like for X to be a circuit, it should be equal to Y. It cannot be a subset of Y. But if X is equal to Y, then we are losing our claim, like we are losing our assumption. So therefore, the first part, like if X is not, then it cannot be a subset of Y. Yeah. If it, yeah. Okay. Second part, if there is an element Z in the intersection of both these circuits, that is, and there is an element which is common to them, then there is another circuit. This is a circuit. Yeah, this small Z capital. Okay, fine. C circuit. C is a circuit. C is a circuit which is a subset of X union Y minus Z. It doesn't contain Z, but it still is a circuit. So the proof for this is by contradiction. Assume there is no circuit in this set. No circuit in. That means this set is independent. That means the rank of this set is actually equal to the cardinality of this set. Okay. So removing this element Z, and we take all the elements from X union Y. Now if you're removing this Z from this, then X and Y become independent. So if we write this as X minus Z union Y minus Z, this and this are independent. Okay, one simple observation is that if there is a circuit C, then the cardinality of C is a circuit. The rank of this rank of C will be equal to number of elements in C minus 1, because that one thing, it's a minimal dependent set, so removing one will make it independent. So this thing is there. So by same thing we can write this as, actually, x union y, and if it's an independent set, we know that the cardinality is equal to that set. So writing this makes sense. I just remove z and it makes this whole set independent. So the cardinality, so the rank of this thing should be equal to the whole set minus z. Okay. So this, you mean this? No, it hasn't come yet. So yeah, x union y minus 1. So now, okay, rank of now, I'll write it here. So x union y can be written as mod of x and put modes. Okay. We use the submodularity of rank function. We write row of x plus row of y greater than or equal to row of x union y plus row of x intersection y. Now see, x intersection y here will be an independent set because it's a subset of proper subset of x union y, x and y. So if we write this as x union y independent okay, another thing, row of x union y should be greater than or equal to row of x union y minus z. So the rank of x union y should be obviously greater than x union y minus z. But that means row of x union y should be greater than or equal to x xn y minus 1. So rho of xn and y. Xn and y is a dependent set. So that means, let me forget this. So rho of xn and y minus 1. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Speak. No. Yeah. Okay. This is wrong because this is actually. So we arrive at a contradiction there. Yeah. So okay. So in a graph, so this circuit property can be used in a graph. Like if a graph has a cycle, then that means the cycle is a circuit actually. Why that is so is because that will satisfy both these properties. If there is a cycle, if there are two cycles, if there are two cycles which are not equal, then one cannot be a subset of another. And if there is a common edge between those two cycles, then we can get another cycle which is the union of both, which contains edges from the union of both those cycles minus this z. It is, sorry sir. Okay, so since a circuit, since a cycle is a circuit, so the independent set will be a graph with no cycles. So that is a set of a forest basically will be an independent set. Paths is a forest. That is also forest. Fine. Uh, only paths. Yes, because that again will satisfy this thing. That is, if you take any, like, can it be disconnected? Like, is a set of paths, right? Okay. Yeah, because uh, if it is, if you take a subset of the path, it is also a path, and we can, if from a longer path we can always choose one edge which is not in the shorter path. Like if there are two paths, we can take one edge from the longer path and add it to the shorter path. It will be a set of paths basically. Like it might be disjoint, but they are still paths. No, sir.
I give you two paths. Let's verify the third condition.
Hmm.
I give you two paths. One is larger than the other. And what do you do?
I just find one edge which is not in. Like okay. And or I can add 4, 5. Or,
1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is one path.
yeah.
Let's say let me draw another path which is 7, 8, 9.
Yeah.
There are two paths in the graph, and one is larger than the other. Now the third condition says that you can always find some vertex and add it to this and get another path.
Yeah. If it's a set of paths, as in we can have some this union some 4, 5. Okay. You want this? No.
Let's work with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 7, 8, 9. These are, so one is a smaller path. The third condition says that you can always pull out a vertex from that path
An
and
edge.
add it to this and get a path. So that makes
Okay. It's if it's a set of paths. Like if it may not be connected. It may not. It's just not one path. Like it's a set of disjoint, not set of paths.
yeah, the way you define it is set
Only
independent if and only with the
then not paths. Then it's
As you said, a disjoint collection of, like, what is a forest? It's a set of trees, right?
set of trees.
So it's just it's a collection of parts, right?
Hmm.
So my independent set is collection of parts. So now I allow it. It could have 2, 3, 4 disjoint objects, right? But they're disjoint. It's not that I'm using like with respect to vertex. If I look at the graph induced in them, then they are nothing but disjoint parts, disjoint vertex, disjoint parts. I allow this. This is still common network.
Yes, sir. See, yes. If we take a set of disjoint paths, is it a matrix? Yes, sir. Yes. And then it's the same thing. I mean, we can if first and second are obvious, and we can take any one edge because they're disjoint. So, so the base for graphic matroid, a matroid represented in terms of graph is called a graphic matroid, is a set of forests, set of trees. That is, it's a forest. So, from here, Shiva Krishnan will continue.
So now we'll be seeing the relationship between a greedy algorithm and a matroid, and how the matroid structure as such says something about whether a greedy algorithm works for the problem, for the optimization problem or not. So we'll have a look at it. So as you had defined, you can call a graphic matroid say given a graph. So I define a matroid M where I You can define it, say I is a set of all spanning forests. So, okay. Okay. So, when I is set of all spanning forests, you can verify that this property holds. So, the idea goes like this, where say I have a graph which is acyclic. So, I'm going to consider only the set of edges. So, any subset of it is still going to be acyclic, and one good property of the matroid is that maximal is maximum. You look at bases in vector spaces, the maximality property holds, and it's also the maximum independent subset of your subspace. So in that case, the similar property holds with spanning trees as such. That is the maximal connected that you could get, and that's the maximum. So you can't add any more edges to it. So another nice property of it is, like you say, you take bases in your vector spaces. It's easy for us to traverse from one basis to the other by removing few elements and adding few other elements. So that kind of helps us here with the greedy approach. So we'll see on how it goes. So say I have a set S is finite, and FB a collection of subsets of S with the property that A belongs to F and so it's basically you're talking about an independent system. So I define a cost function from S to R plus, and my problem is to find A naught belongs to F and is the maximum. So one approach to the problem is a greedy one, where at each point you choose one and you don't look back again saying whether that choice was optimal. So you can write a greedy algorithm like this. No X stop step K choose X1 to Xk belongs to F. So this you can say is like formally writing a greedy algorithm, where at each point choose one so that it is still independent, and then proceed. Keep doing it till you find no X as that it belongs to F. Any independent system, it is fine with that, because you can also talk about it saying where a problem, any problem be it, so take all its feasible solutions and take all the subsets and define the independent system. And so at the end we'll be sure that we'll hit a feasible solution anyway, and we'll have to verify if this works or not, because most of the problems where you see greedy algorithm doesn't work. So that is one place where we'll see that if the underlying structure, if this F independent system forms the independent sets of a matrix, then greedy algorithm works. So we'll see it. So if F is a collection so proof. The thing is, we assume that it's a mat, right? And I'll prove that the greedy algorithm works. So we all know that algorithm is going to go hit a basis by the augmentation property that you stuck. The third axiom, where if the size is less than, if we have two independent sets and one is less than the other, so we can make the set with the lower cardinality, you can add elements to it so that it equals the one with the higher cardinality. So here we are sure that it is going to hit a basis of the whole matrix structure. So our claim is like it is the maximum, that is you will hit the optimal. So we'll assume the contrary and we'll see. So so say B is not optimal. So choose so we choose a base such that its weight is greater than the base B that the algorithm chose, and we choose T such that this intersection is maximum. So let xk be the first So we'll choose an element that the algorithm chose which belongs to B but doesn't belong to T, the first element. So we can see that T is a basis, so T union xk is dependent and has a circuit C. And xk belongs to it, belongs to C, it is a subset of T union xk. So, and we know another property where there exists a y which belongs to C minus B. This is guaranteed because there will be at least one element which belongs to C and not belongs to B, because otherwise there will be a circuit in B, but B is a base and so there can be any circuits. So this holds. So there is one property where T minus Y union xk becomes a base, is a base. It's not that difficult to verify, where you can say that when you add an element there will be only one unique circuit which is formed, and if you take any element belonging to the circuit and not to the another base, then it forms a base. So this can be verified, it's not difficult. Or if not, if you're not able to imagine, maybe you can think of it as you have a spanning tree in hand, you add an edge to it, it forms a cycle, and you remove another edge which is a part of a cycle, then it forms another spanning tree, and it's still a base. So that's how it goes. So we know that W of y is less than or equal to W of x, xk, because that's how we chose xk. It's like we are choosing all maximums, so it's a maximization problem. So the choice of xk, we get this inequality. So we look at the weight of this set. So this is greater than W of t, this is greater than W of b. So we see that, and it's very clear that if you take it as t1 is greater than, which contradicts our choice of t here, because you get another basis where it has more elements, common elements with the base that the algorithm chose, and its weight is greater than this. So we arrive at a contradiction, and so we say and it's proved that the algorithm works. It gives you the optimal solution. So if you look at this proof, it's more similar to the proof that Kruskal, proof of correctness of Kruskal algorithm, where you come up with a contradiction where you have, say, I form a spanning tree and then I add another edge and remove edges so that it still remains the maximum. So you kind of actually there are three equivalent statements where if it's a spanning tree, then there is one property where you add another extra edge, and the minimum weight of that cycle that is formed, it has to be part of the minimum spanning tree. So some properties like that hold. So it's more similar to what we have proved here. So we'll do another proof. Independent system. So we'll see if F is an independent system over S, and then F will be the independent set of over S. So it's clear that F is an independent system. First two properties of the axiom hold, where null set belongs to F, and you take any set that belongs to F, sets do belong to F. So we just have to prove the third axiom where you can augment a set. So say is pk plus 1. To show there exists a bi such that so we'll have to show this. We have two sets which belong to the independent system, then you take one element from B and add it to A such that it still belongs to F. So we know greedy algorithm works for all non-negative cost functions. So take a cost function W, that W of AI is equal to U, W of BI is equal to E, W of E is 0. So, and make sure that U is greater than B. So we know that the greedy algorithm chooses all AIs because A is independent, so it will go till AK, and if there is a BI which makes A union BI belongs to F, then it will choose that BI. Otherwise it's going to choose all 0 elements until it hits a maximal set. So we say that there is no BI exists, we'll assume that. Such that so what the greedy algorithm here chooses is the set A union some set P, where the weight of all elements in P is 0. That's how we have defined the weight function to be, because we have assumed that no BI is chosen, and so we choose only all 0 elements. So weight of the solution is equal to K times U, and say A intersection B is equal to T. So we'll compare this with the weight of B is equal to T times U plus K minus 1 plus T over here. Yeah. So we have chosen U to be greater than B, and you can as well verify that there will exist human beings with this property, and W of A union P is less than W of B. So this is a contradiction, because we know that the greedy algorithm works, and it has chosen the wrong set first. So this proves that if f is an independent system works, then the greedy algorithm works. And if the greedy algorithm works, then it forms a matrix. So this is one thing that I wanted to do. But as a lot of problems cannot be solved by using greedy algorithm. So what is the use of matroid then? So that how does it help us? There are a few problems which do fall into intersection of matrices where the solution will be in the intersection of two matrices. So we'll see one example where two intersection matroid, you can see it, a bipartite matching problem is actually a two intersection matroid problem. So we'll see that. So I'll define something as a partition matroid. Okay, and some subset A, B. Fine, yeah, it's a partition of E. And so we define, let A be a subset. So it is A belongs to I if and only if so we partition the set into k sets and we define the matroid as the set with respect to set T, and this tells you about the independency. So here it's independent if and only if no two elements of A belong to the same partition. So that's what this says. So we'll see, and it's easy to verify that it's a matroid, but we'll see how this helps us. So we'll take the problem of bipartite matching. Here E1 there is one edge here. Yeah. So we see that E1, this edge, and this one forms the matching. That is and this edge. And you can't extend this matching. this is a maximal matching here, but there is a maximum matching of size 4. This is of size 3. So this tells us that it's not a matroid, because if it has to have the matroid property, the maximal is maximum. So it doesn't hold here. So you can look at a partition matroid like this. Set E be the set of all edges. So I have this structure I, where E1 E2 E3, and here are some E10s here, E4 E10, yeah, it goes like this. So what I'm basically doing here is taking each vertex in this partition and writing all edges that belong to vertex V1, V2, V3 and like that. So, and it forms a partition matroid. So this has E1, E2, E3, first set, second set, it goes on. So you say similar way you can define it for U. Where we'll have all the edges of V1 in one set, V2 another set, V3 another set, V4 another set, and we know that forms a partition. And our problem is to find a matching. So you can see that any set, any independent set in I and U, which is independent in both, will form a matching. What does I say if it has to be independent? Each vertex can have at max only one edge coming out of it. So what is independency in U? Each vertex can have at max only one edge coming out of it. So when I impose say both has to be satisfied, so which means that at max one edge from this side, one edge from this side for all vertices, which means it's a matching because no two edges will have the same vertex as an endpoint. So you can look at it as an intersection of two matroids, where one matroid is the partition of the left hand side elements and the other one is partition on the right hand side vertex. So there are nice algorithms to solve it, where there is a known algorithm for the bipartite matching where they use the augmenting path, so alternating path. So they actually define something called as an alternating path and an augmenting path for two matroids. A given matroid M1 and M2, so you can define it. So I'm not doing it now, but you can do it. So this is an example of two intersection problem, and it's P time. And yeah, I forgot to mention something there. So basically in the greedy algorithm, what we do at each step is we do check for the membership at each time. When I add a new element, I check if it still belongs to the independent set or not. So that's just checking a membership problem. So if I know that that's P time, then my whole algorithm is P time, because I'm going to do n into that P. So that whole thing is going to be P time. So that is one observation there. And you can show that 3 matroid intersection is NP complete. A reduction could be done from directed Hamilton path problem. I've given a directed graph and I have to check if it has an Hamilton path. So you reduce that to a 3 intersection problem. So books to refer that I referred was Matroid Theory by D.J. Welch. Also this book by Combinatorial Optimization by Papadimitrov, that's also nice. Thank you.